Hello, dear friends. Today we continue our acquaintance with the surprisingly candid memoirs of a Wehrmacht general. Don't forget to rate the video, and let's get started. March 28th, 1943. Report to the family. Apart from everything else, the local population may well evoke pity. It's complete chaos. We took away all those who were able to work from the abandoned territory, leaving behind the old and infirm. They have only a couple of habitable houses at their disposal to find shelter in. Everything else has been burned down. The population is heading to the rear in columns on foot, carrying their meager belongings in sacks. Rarely does anyone have a sled or a cow. In the rear, these columns are sifted through once again. Some are sent to local villages, some to Germany, and some to construction work. This separates families. One stays behind, another digs bunkers and builds roads, and a third goes to Munster to work in agriculture. None of them know where they will end up in the future. They have lost their belongings and their meager possessions, but at least they are grateful that we are making sure they have something to eat. To endure all this, you need Russian obedience and the ability to endure suffering. April 8th, 1943. Letter to his wife. The Russians have now put me and Colonel General Model on the list of war criminals and officially announced this on the radio, adding that I must be punished after the war. Allegedly, on my orders, thousands of Soviet citizens were brutally tortured and tortured to death. Their noses and ears were cut off, their legs and arms were chopped off, and their eyes were gouged out. That is, the same propaganda of horror as in the Small World War. Of course, they are particularly embittered by the destruction of towns and villages during our retreat. April 15th and 16th. Report to the family. When I went hunting the other day, I was struck by the pristine nature that is evident throughout this vast country. Here, on the bare earth, there is nothing imaginary or artificial. Here, untamed nature still reigns supreme. Only the healthy and strong can withstand its onslaught. Here, people are still so fused with nature that they do not live alongside it, but within it. Therefore, it is understandable that Russian soldiers surpass German soldiers in many practical matters, and in their hardiness in relation to the phenomena of nature. Recently, I asked a captured senior lieutenant tankman, "Why do you consider winter to be the best time of year for waging war? Why are your people more accustomed to it? After all, they lie on stoves from November to April." "But if they get off," he replied, "they will run barefoot through the snow and not even feel it." April 16th. When we came out onto the clearing at 2:45, we heard a low rumbling sound above us, which we recognized as a Soviet plane flying west. Supplies for the Partisans. He wanted to either land somewhere away from the forest, using light signals for guidance, or drop ammunition and other supplies by parachute. Everywhere in our rear, all the way to Poland, gangs have settled in the forests, trying to blow up roads, attack Germans, seize livestock and provisions, rob peasants, prevent them from giving us food and, thanks to their power, hinder the agricultural and forestry development of the territories. We have to wage real military campaigns against them. With tenacity and endurance, they fight their way from forest to forest when pursued, and with air supplies, are quite a treacherous enemy. The fighting is merciless on both sides. The best way to fight them is to deploy our eastern units, consisting of former Russian soldiers, who are equally well prepared for the conditions and treachery of fighting in swamps and forests. Under the command of German officers, who also have a little bandit blood running through their veins, they perform excellently. In this war, night, ambush, and raids play the leading roles. The bandits have informants and sources of information everywhere, so it is rare to catch them off guard. Here, under the guise of secrecy, there is a warning system that we cannot adequately counter. The messengers in this system are children, women, girls, and old people. Light signals, a white towel on a fence, a rag hanging on a bush, a window that is not darkened in the evening, a lamp that suddenly goes out. These are their warning and identification signals. And so beneath us, around us, against us, there is a widespread organization that uses both primitive and modern means of communication and wants to harm the Fritzes. They know that thousands have been captured and shot, but the rest continue to fight nonetheless. Again and again in Smolensk, Orel, and Roslavl, conspiratorial organizations are exposed and receive their deserved punishment. But new ones arise. But this is only part of the population. They are opposed by those Russians who are hostile to Bolshevism, the many thousands who have lost their relatives, friends, and loved ones because of the Bolsheviks, and the majority of the rural population, who lost their property at that time or are now being robbed by partisans. They are appointed burgomasters, organize security services, act as informants and sources of information for us, and are currently being used to create Eastern formations. The rest waver between the two sides, fearing both, adjusting their views to the situation on the front lines, shouting Hosanna today and crucify him tomorrow. Their conscience is often unclean, for they served the Germans, worked for them as craftsmen or carters, and now fear the Bolsheviks' revenge if they return. It is a proven fact that Stalin ordered the killing of anyone who collaborated with the Germans in the territories he conquered, even cleaning ladies. But these same people, after we left their territories, tell stories about German cruelty to show their impeccable red convictions. It is precisely because of this that Model and I were declared war criminals on Russian radio who must be punished fairly. Our radio station recently issued a denial and strongly protested the slanderous allegations that people were burned or brutally murdered on our orders. At the same time, not far from Smolensk, an example was found of how the Bolsheviks treated the Polish intelligentsia. It is so horrific that it is impossible to describe. My quartermaster was there yesterday and saw how they identified the rector of Warsaw University, the head of the Polish Military Academy, and a Polish brigadier general. They were wearing their uniforms and had letters, valuables, and sword belts with them. All 8 of them were lying in a row, killed by a shot to the back of the head. May 7th, 1943. Report to the family. We have now set up women's battalions for engineering work everywhere, and they are working well. They are diligent and so knowledgeable that it is enough to say, here is a position for a machine gunner, and the position will be prepared with centimeter precision. They are housed in a camp of finished tents, and the non-commissioned officer in charge of their camp takes care of waking them up and lining them up. Then they work for 10 hours, return home, and receive food that has been prepared by the cooks in the meantime. If there is enough food, they are quite satisfied. Truly amazing things are happening during this war. May 8th, 1943. Letter to his wife. Tunis and Bizerte have fallen, which means Africa is finished. This is one of the decisive turning points in the war, and it is not in our favor. How long will Italy hold out? It has now lost all of its possessions. It seems that there is a desire to start peace negotiations, but the other side is not inclined to do so. After all, they don't need them. June 6th, 1943. Report to the family. No changes on our front. Both sides are generally calm. The positions are very well fortified, and life goes on with a certain regularity. Warming weather, dry ground, infrequent combat operations, and short nights that make guard duty easier all make life bearable for soldiers under military conditions. Also, our biggest scourge, namely lice, has practically disappeared, as we have persistently fought them with washing, saunas, and fresh air. The number of typhus cases has thus decreased significantly. In view of all this, the mood is good and the soldiers are satisfied. They hope that the German offensive will begin somewhere, and that the war will thus come to an end. June 11th. Report to my family. On Tuesday morning, as our battles with the bandits drew to a close, I flew south. In total, about 600 bandits were killed, and up to 50 of their camps were destroyed. Nevertheless, the remnants are still roaming the large forest. On the way, I saw a bridge that had recently been blown up by these very people, who also fired on the village we were occupying. They avoid any fighting, scatter individually, hide in the treetops or in impenetrable swamp thickets. They can only be found there by chance, but as soon as our soldiers leave, they come out, gather together, and start raiding again. It is a thankless task to fight against an enemy who only evades and disappears. Our soldiers, tormented by mosquitoes and parasites, walk through the forest for days, spend the night there, search and find nothing, but suddenly they come under fire, and as soon as they manage to counterattack, the enemy has vanished without a trace. We are now evacuating all residents from this area. In doing so, we hope to hinder or even stop the supply of the bandits. June 29th. Diary entry. Kissingen. It is very unfortunate that we are unable to counter the air raids on Germany. Cologne, Düsseldorf, Duisburg, Essen, Dortmund, Wuppertal, Bochum, Mainz. A sad balance. And that's only in the West. The architectural monuments destroyed in Cologne, Mainz, Düsseldorf, and Dortmund are irreplaceable losses for German culture. Anger and rage overwhelm anyone who thinks about it. Did our aviators think, when they were preparing to fly to England in the autumn of 1940, that such retribution would follow? At that time, Goering wanted to bring England to its knees in 14 days with his air raids. Now our enemies have the same intentions, albeit over a longer period of time. England sees air raids as an essential way to end the war more quickly, Churchill announced. It seems that, under the circumstances, he considers this even more effective than landing in Europe. There was a time when Goering declared that for every bomb dropped on Germany, 100 would be dropped in response. Our enemies are reminding us of this today through leaflets, which they are dropping by the tens of thousands. For 2 years now, our Air Force has been tied down in the Mediterranean and in the East, and our defense against raids is not so effective that the enemy would not dare to launch new ones, and nothing has come of the retaliation. In this respect, unfortunately, the situation has taken a completely different turn over the past 3 years. July 5th, 1943. Diary entry. Those people in Germany who are able to look a little ahead understand that the overall situation is not very promising. They reflect on this a lot, but very few speak out. Most people remain silent, out of caution. But they sense a change compared to previous years. In 1940, victory over France. In 1941, a rapid offensive against Russia. In 1942, at least a partial offensive with the conquest of territory. Today, there is calm and anticipation. The change in the operational situation is quite clear in this comparison. In addition, there are ongoing air raids on the Rhine and cities in the Ruhr region, as well as a decreasing number of ships sunk by submarines. At the same time, everyone is eager to hold out, as it is clear to everyone that defeat in this war is not an option. because what would follow is impossible to imagine. Germany will perish, and we along with it. July 8th, diary entry. The battle for Orel has been going on for 4 days now. Our preparations were largely completed in May, but the enemy has also assembled a more than formidable force there. He was ready both to repel the German attack and to attack himself, obviously to regain Ukraine. The Führer delayed the start of the offensive for a long time. It seemed that our forces were not strong enough compared to the large forces of the enemy. First of all, it was necessary to increase the number and power of our tanks so that they could really break through, because here the strongest units of the Wehrmacht and the Red Army clashed in battle. The masses of both armies, or rather the masses at the disposal of the commanders, stand opposite each other. This is how this fateful battle is being fought. When I left for Kissingen, Field Marshal Kluge said, "It will probably take place." He was not sure about it. One thing is certain. If it is won, and the enemy suffers such heavy losses that it will not be able to attack either in summer or even in winter, it will be decisive for the defense against the concentric attacks of our enemies in Europe. If the Russians are paralyzed, then on the Eastern Front it may be possible to free up forces to strengthen the front against the British and Americans. We can only ask God to be on the side of our weapons. In this battle, the task of the Fourth Army will be to hold out under any circumstances. The possibility of the enemy launching a counterattack on its front is quite real, if only to tie up our forces and prevent them from being transferred to decide the outcome of the battle. All my activities, which are described at the beginning of this notebook, serve to enable us to repel this offensive. July 29th, diary entry. The landing and gradual advance in Sicily pose a significant threat to our positions in Europe. Sentiment in Italy is mixed. Many do not want Mussolini and his system. It is on these people that the Entente's plan for the landing in Sicily relies. This is where the enemy sees our weak spot. If they succeed in knocking Italy out of the Axis, it would mean a dangerous breach in the German defense system. How close they could get to southern Germany with their air force, and the Balkans would then be engulfed in a certain sense. Therefore, the enemy's successes are extremely unpleasant for all of us. In addition, Hartmut is fighting there. We know that serious dangers await him in such battles. May God not forsake him and keep him safe. The situation is different and seemingly better with the battle in the east. According to Wehrmacht reports, large Russian forces were indeed defeated there. More than 5,000 tanks and more than 2,000 aircraft have been destroyed, figures never seen before. The Russian offensive on Orel and on the Meuse front has also been unsuccessful. It seems that the Russian offensive operation to help the Allies has stalled. This is a truly significant result. Now, after such a defeat, the enemy is unlikely to achieve any significant success. This means that the decision to bypass Kursk was the right one after all. Historical reference. On August 7th, the Red Army launched a major offensive against the positions of the Fourth Army in the direction of Smolensk. It was repelled, but from September 16th to October 2nd, the Fourth Army retreated about 100 kilometers, taking up the prepared Panther position west of Smolensk. And this planned retreat operation was again accompanied by systematic destruction using a scorched earth tactic. 6th, 1943. Report to the family. We did everything in our power to prepare for the upcoming offensive and got ready to give the enemy a proper welcome. The mood in the troops is good, and events in Italy do not affect it too much. Everyone here has so much of their own work to do that there is no time to think about this distant theater of war. Yesterday, one division commander told me about the mood in the division. Italy is not on the road from Vyazma to Yelnya. Therefore, we are not interested in what is happening with the Italians. September 6, 1943. Letter to his wife. Today, for the first time in many days, is a morning without a single crisis. But it's not worth making plans for the evening. It's impossible to imagine how many times in recent weeks we've had to endure the most difficult situations. But that's not surprising. The Russians have gathered such superior forces against me. They have so much artillery, ammunition, aircraft, and such numerous infantry, which is constantly receiving reinforcements and new weapons, that it is fair to say that we are coping with all this only by a miracle. But this cannot go on forever. After all, we are getting weaker every day, but we are not receiving reinforcements. There simply aren't any. We are in the final stage of this war. We need to be very clear about this. We will not be able to turn the situation around on our own. Time has run out. The peoples of the occupied territories are beginning to revolt. The Balkans have already turned into one big rebel movement. Denmark rose up too early, but Poland and the others will soon follow. And behind all this are our enemies, eager to destroy us. For you, this means that you should not stop trying to invest your compensation in something. Wouldn't it be better to buy a plot of land in a ruined city, which will later be rebuilt because it is located within the city limits? How quickly everything that people have prayed for and revered since 1933 is collapsing. Suddenly, people realize that God is not to be trifled with, and that He alone sits on His heavenly throne. Things are moving as they are moving. Serious decisions, as usual, are not being made at this time. Everyone believes, hopes, and waits until the situation becomes unbearable. And one fine day, it will. That's all for today. If you liked the video, please support it with a like and subscribe to the channel. See you all soon.